Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into the life and crimes of James Richard Curry.
Not exactly a household name.
Right. Not a name that grabbed headlines, but the story
Yeah.
is truly captivating, truly dark. And we've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one.
Yeah.
Court documents, old news clippings,
Mhm.
even some recent genetic genealogy reports.
It's really cool. What's interesting about this one is it's not just about the crimes themselves, right? One of Curry's victims was unidentified for almost 40 years
Yeah.
and was only recently identified through genetic genealogy.
Exactly. So we'll be exploring the twists and turns of this case, from Curry's early life to the cutting-edge tech that brought closure to this decades-old mystery.
Let's get into it. Let's start with what we know about Curry's early life.
Yeah.
He was born in Texas in 1946, an illegitimate child,
Hmm.
raised by his mother under a different name. So
Oh, wow.
there's a lot of mystery right from the get-go. Details are scarce, but it seems like a childhood shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how those early experiences might have shaped him later in life, right? We know he ended up serving 20 years in the Huntsville unit in Texas for a robbery and assault. What kind of impact does 2 decades in that kind of environment have?
Hard to say for sure, but it's certainly not a recipe for rehabilitation.
Yeah.
So upon release in 77, Curry moved to California, settled in Joaquina, and got work as a locksmith.
Okay.
Now, that might seem ordinary enough, but, looking back, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, you start thinking about the access, the knowledge of security systems.
Exactly.
It's a little unsettling.
It is. And then there's this curious case of James DeWitt Robinson, a fellow locksmith Curry knew in Joaquina.
Okay.
Robinson disappeared in 78, never to be seen again. What's more, he was never reported missing, so no investigation.
Wait, what? So there's a chance his disappearance was totally missed?
Yeah, completely overlooked.
Yeah.
Now, this was years before any of Curry's confirmed crimes. But knowing what we know now, it's hard not to connect those dots, especially when you consider that Robinson had gotten a $10,000 personal injury settlement in 76 and was dabbling in some property deals in Tulare.
That almost sounds like you're describing a perfect target. Someone with money, property, and no one to raise the alarm if they were to go missing.
Exactly. Was this a crime that just went unnoticed, or was it the start of something much darker for Curry?
It's a chilling thought.
It is.
And then just a few years later, the confirmed murders began in 1982, starting with Stephen Mark Lemon, another locksmith, and someone who seemingly had a good relationship with Curry at first. What went wrong there?
Sources point to a falling out, though the details are fuzzy.
Okay.
But what is clear is how brutal the crime was. Curry lured Lemon to a storage locker, shot him in the head, and hid the body in a wooden crate.
And he gave Lemon's motorcycle to one of his sons.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even process that? It just seems so cold.
It really does point to a lack of remorse,
Yeah.
just this detachment from the reality of what he'd done.
Right.
Was it a twisted need for control? Or some desperate attempt to appear normal?
It's a disturbing puzzle.
Yeah.
And sadly, just the beginning of Curry's reign of terror. It's hard to even imagine, doing something that awful and then just carrying on like nothing happened.
Well, that's what he did, at least for a while. But his next crime takes us out of California, and it left a mystery behind that would linger for decades.
You're talking about Mary Silvani,
Yeah,
known for years only as Sheep's Flat Jane Doe.
that's right.
Her story's just heartbreaking.
In July of 1982, some hikers made a really grim discovery along a hiking trail in Washoe County, Nevada. A woman's body, clearly a victim of a violent attack. Sexually assaulted, shot in the head, no ID, no clues as to who she was or where she came from.
I can only imagine the frustration for the investigators. You've got a victim, you have a crime scene, but no way to connect the dots.
And for decades, that's how it stayed. Sheep's Flat Jane Doe became this symbol, really, for the countless Jane and John Does out there. Their stories just lost to time.
It's so sad. But then something pretty amazing happened. This case that seemed destined to remain cold forever gets thrust back into the spotlight. And it's all thanks to advancements in forensic science.
It is. Genetic genealogy, that's the game changer here.
Wow, yeah.
This revolutionary technique, combining DNA analysis with traditional genealogy, opens up this entirely new avenue for investigators.
So how does it actually work? This sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It's more straightforward than you might think. So in the mid-2010s, Washoe County forensic experts, they were determined to finally give Sheep's Flat Jane Doe back her name.
Okay.
They decided to utilize this new technology.
So they had a DNA sample from the victim. What did they do with it?
They teamed up with organizations like the DNA Doe Project and Identifinders International, and these groups specialize in using genetic genealogy to crack cold cases. They took Silvani's DNA profile and they uploaded it to a public database called GED Match.
Now, GED Match, that's not just for law enforcement, right?
No, not at all. It's a database where anybody can upload their DNA to connect with relatives or maybe learn about their ancestry. But the key is that it allows for comparison of DNA profiles,
I see.
even from distant relatives.
So investigators were basically hoping to get lucky, hoping to find someone somewhere who might be related to this unidentified victim.
Exactly. And they got a hit. Not an immediate family member, but enough of a match to suggest a family connection.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, but that's where the real expertise comes in, the genealogy part.
Right.
They had to build a family tree based on this DNA link, tracing lineages, following these genetic trails.
Oh my gosh, it sounds so complicated.
It's meticulous. It requires this really deep understanding of both genetics and genealogy.
Wow.
But they got there in the end. They were able to trace that lineage back to a couple who had a daughter, Mary Silvani, a daughter who'd gone missing years earlier.
So they finally had a name, a face to go with this case. But how could they be absolutely sure that Sheep's Flat Jane Doe was really Mary Silvani?
Well, to be certain, they needed more than just a family tree.
Right.
They compared Silvani's DNA with her parents' DNA, confirming that biological link. And then they went a step further. They found records that showed that Silvani had actually been arrested for a minor offense in Detroit back in '74. Fingerprints. And those fingerprints matched perfectly with the ones taken from the unidentified body in Nevada. It was definitive.
Wow, what a story.
It's amazing, isn't it? Mary Silvani, the missing daughter, was finally coming home.
Yeah. But we still have this big question. How do they tie James Richard Curry to this murder? He was already dead by this point.
Right, but that's where DNA technology once again becomes crucial.
Okay.
They needed to place him at the crime scene, but they obviously couldn't rely on a confession.
So even though Curry was gone, could his DNA still help solve this case?
Potentially, yeah. They reached out to Curry's children and got DNA samples from them.
Oh, wow.
It wouldn't be a direct match to Curry himself, obviously, but they could still use his children's DNA to establish a familial link.
And did it work?
The results were conclusive. The DNA profile from Curry's children matched the DNA profile of the perpetrator found at Silvani's murder scene. Decades after her death, they had the evidence needed to directly link Curry to the crime.
It's amazing how DNA can reach across time like that.
It is truly remarkable. And in this case, it offered a sense of justice for Mary Silvani and her family, even if the perpetrator was never brought to trial.
Does this make you wonder how many other cold cases are just sitting there waiting for that one breakthrough that could change everything?
Well, that's a question we'll dive into after a quick break.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about all those unsolved cases out there, just waiting for that one piece of the puzzle, that one piece of evidence that could blow the whole thing wide open. And it seems like in a lot of cases, that could be genetic genealogy.
Oh, it's definitely a game changer for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it's not just about catching the bad guys, although that's obviously a huge part of it. It's also about, restoring identities, giving a voice back to the victims who have been forgotten.
It's like with Mary Silvani.
Exactly.
For all those years, she was just a name on a file, a mystery. But through genetic genealogy, she was brought back to life in a way, given back her story.
It's powerful, and you have to think about the ripple effect, too.
Yeah.
Solving one cold case can sometimes lead to connections with other unsolved crimes.
Oh, okay.
You start to see patterns, links that were hidden before.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. One breakthrough leading to another. It's amazing.
They really feel like we're on the verge of something big here, like a whole new era of criminal justice.
It does.
Where time is no longer the enemy, where you never really lose hope of solving a crime.
And as more and more people submit their DNA to these databases, the pool of information just grows exponentially.
Yeah.
So it becomes more and more likely that you'll find those crucial matches.
But it's not without its problems, is it? Using these public DNA databases for law enforcement, that raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Oh, absolutely. There's a balance to be struck.
Yeah.
We have this incredible tool for justice.
Right.
But we have to think about privacy, potential for misuse,
of course,
clear guidelines, safeguards, all of that.
It's a really complex issue, and I think it's a conversation that's only just beginning.
Oh, for sure.
And it's going to become even more important as genetic genealogy becomes more widespread.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about. What's the next chapter in all of this?
It's hard to say. Technology is constantly evolving. What seems impossible today might be commonplace tomorrow.
That's true.
But one thing's for sure, genetic genealogy has completely changed the game when it comes to crime solving.
It's exciting, but also a little bit scary, right?
Yeah,
We have this incredible power to unlock secrets from the past,
we do.
but we have to be careful how we use it.
Couldn't agree more. It's a journey that needs careful thought and open discussion every step of the way.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the case of James Richard Curry.
And the impact of genetic genealogy.
We've gone through the dark details of his crimes, the mystery surrounding Mary Silvani's identity, and the incredible technology that brought everything to light.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating look not just at this case, but the bigger picture of what genetic genealogy means for the future.
We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. The potential of DNA technology to solve these crimes, to give hope to families who thought they might never get answers, it's truly remarkable.
And this is just the beginning. The
Exactly.
story of genetic genealogy is still being written.
That's right, and it's going to be a fascinating story to follow.
It is.
So to all our listeners out there, if you want to learn more about James Richard Curry, about Mary Silvani, or more about genetic genealogy, we encourage you to keep digging.
Yeah, there's a ton of info online, in libraries.
Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.